Good luck. Now, church leaders are hitting back after Tommy Robinson supporters waved crosses and chanted Christian slogans during a huge London rally. Of course, that's the Unite the Kingdom rally. In a rare united front, senior figures across denominations, the faith is being, quotes, misused to divide, not to unite, and they've written an open letter of warning. Well, let's now speak with the former Anglican Bishop, Gavin Ashenden. Gavin, always a pleasure to have your company. So, a gaggle of archbishops, reverends, bishops and lords have all joined together. They've sent a letter out saying that the cross is being misused. It's a misuse of Christianity, they say, for patriots on a march in London to march with a cross. And they're saying that because the rally included racist, anti-Muslim and far-right elements, therefore, that shouldn't be allowed to be used on the march. Do they really get to decide who carries the cross and how?
You're quite right. Luckily, they don't. I think there are two issues here. One is that there's something called Wokery, which has infected our culture. It's got into education, police. It's got into national trusts, and gardeners were sacked the other day, volunteers for not aligning with the values of Wokery. It's got into the churches too. So this is religious Wokery rather than Christianity. And we've been bombarded with propaganda of Wokery for a long time. It's not surprising that people succumb, but it's always a great shame. I think the other element is what's happened to Tommy Robinson. He's got a checkered past. Most people have. He's been given the utmost scrutiny, but he's known to most people for standing up for young white working class girls who've been the victims of grooming gangs when nobody else would, and paid the price by becoming a political prisoner. Now, we know that in prison he was seen by the chaplain. Actually, I know a bit about this. Tommy Robinson asked me to support him about 5 years ago, and I refused. I said I wouldn't stand by him in a political movement, but I'd rethink if he became a Christian. I'm told he was seen with a rosary coming out of prison. I don't see why anyone can be a Christian except Tommy Robinson. So, no, I don't think the religious Wokery are allowed to say who gets to carry a cross and who doesn't.
And Gavin Ashenden, I know people who are on that march who actually feel like Christianity is being eroded, it's being undermined, it's not being treated seriously as a religion in our country, which is still just about Judeo-Christian, and they feel that Christianity is being abandoned by the types of people that are now calling them far-right.
Well, they're right. It's not just a feeling, it's an accurate description of what's happening. It's part of the tragedy and the scale of the crisis is that the people who are in charge of the churches, I don't think this is true of the Catholic Church, but I'm afraid I think it is true of the Protestant churches in this country. I can explain why if necessary, but to keep it brief for the moment, the people in charge of the mainstream churches have gone woke, and they've actually abandoned the people. We're entitled to ask for Christians to be treated equally with Muslims, but they're treated worse now. You don't have people sacked for being Muslims at work, you do have them sacked for being Christians. And so I think the people you're describing are quite right. And they're not, those on the march are not far right. They're just ordinary common sense citizens asking for equal rights and for a society that can stay glued together rather than, as we're finding now with the intensity of immigration, becoming unglued with some very serious social casualties because of it.
And Gavin Ashenden, I think you're exactly right, by the way. You speak in absolute common sense today. People will be crying out in joy at their televisions for what you're saying. You're finally speaking out some common sense here. And isn't it the point that people feel that the church speaks out on climate change, on vaccines, on immigration, on refugees welcome, a multitude of things, and of course they're entitled to do so. If you break rank, well, actually, I don't agree with that part of Christianity. In some way, you're seen to be a bad Christian. You're being excommunicated almost from the conversation. And that's the last thing that Jesus Christ would have done.
Well, that's absolutely right. I mean, first of all, I want to say thank you to GBNews, because without you, we wouldn't even, and Elon Musk, without you, we wouldn't even be able to have the conversation. But the fact is that one can't really talk about the church. You can talk about churches that have gone woke and churches that are keeping the faith. And that was the distinction I was trying to make earlier on. The problem is that the churches that are trying to keep the faith and live out the values of Jesus have discovered that it's illegal to do it. In fact, if you were to stand on a pavement and read out from a Bible, you'd be arrested by our police for causing a hate crime. No one's ever been arrested for reading from the Quran for doing that. So we have a two-tier justice system, a two-tier culture, and we absolutely need church leaders who are willing to speak out and to defend the choice of being a Christian. We're not asking everyone to be forced to be Christians. We're just asking for the choice to be a Christian and to express and live Christian values.
Well, Gavin Ashenden, you thanked us for giving you a platform. I'd like to thank you for using it so eloquently. Magnificent. Former Anglican Bishop Gavin Ashenden, thank you for coming on today. I really, really mean that. Now, coming up next, the digital